Oh, hi. I have been trying to make this video since Mother's Day. I want to make some chocolate chip cookies, and I actually think I'm going to turn them into chocolate chip bars. I don't know, I'm kind of feeling that bar texture more than a cookie. So this is going to be a little different from my usual videos, but here we go. Let's make some chocolate chip cookies. I did it again, chocolate chip bars. But you can make them into cookies. The only difference will be the amount of time in the oven and how you place them, obviously. So let's get started. As you might be able to tell from the terrible lighting, it has been cloudy here for forever, days and days, and it's still cloudy and it's still cold. And now it's muddy outside because it's been raining for like 3 days in a row. So I haven't been able to get outside, which is why I'm going to make some chocolate chip cookies, bars. I have also been trying to diet and eat right and get more exercise. But when the weather is this gloomy, who wants to do any of that, right? I mean, I know it's, important to like force yourself, but today is just a day. How's that? Let's just have a day. Let's have some damn cookies. I am cutting this recipe in half because I don't want to make the full recipe, because the full recipe makes a lot. But I will put the full recipe in the description. So don't forget, this is a half a recipe. Half a cup of butter, which is 8 tablespoons, right? Yeah. I got myself in a little bit of a pickle with using the European butter. The European sticks of butter, they're more like a block. And was second guessing my knowledge of measurements because a European block of butter is 8 ounces, which is a cup. And these sticks of butter, the American style, are 4 ounces, which is a half a cup. So when I switched over to this, not that I've switched forever, I'm just broke, my head imploded. I was having a moment. Half a cup of butter, 1 stick. And then we're gonna do, oh no, where's my, one of the tricks to my chocolate chip cookies, which everyone seems to love, definitely not complaining there, is I use a little bit more brown sugar than I do white sugar, or regular sugar, I should say. I don't use white sugar, I use cane sugar. And this is my homemade brown sugar. So I'm doing, it calls for a half a cup of white sugar. It calls for 3/4 cup of brown sugar and a 1/4 cup of white sugar. So that was a half a cup. And here's a 1/4 cup. So there's the 3/4 cup brown sugar. And I'll do the 1/4 cup regular sugar. Okay. Usually I also do this in the mixer because I have somewhat of a bad hand, bad thumb, and I have arthritis and all that good stuff. But since I haven't been getting any exercise and haven't been able to go outside and all that stuff, I'm going to do this by hand. So I'm going to cream this butter and sugar together very well, and then I'll show you the results when I come back. Okay, so my butter was not soft enough, so I'm going to show you a little trick to combating that issue if that happens to you. I'm having trouble talking today too, so I started mixing everything up and the butter was too hard for me to be able to do it with the whisk, so I broke up the butter into smaller chunks And now I will leave it sitting on the counter while I mix the dry ingredients. So while that sits on the counter, and the butter being in smaller chunks, it will soften while we mix the dry ingredients. And I like to mix the dry ingredients before I add them into the wet ingredients, because if you mix all your wet and then you add on top of that your flour, and then you add on top of that your baking powder and your baking soda and your salt, doesn't really seem to me like the baking soda, the baking powder, and the salt are going to stir up properly into the whole mixture, if that makes sense. If you mix them previously, before you do that, put the flour and everything and whisk it all together, that kind of incorporates everything into the flour, and then it mixes better into the whole mixture. Does that make sense? Probably not, but some of you will figure it out. Look, you guys, I finally got myself a flour container. I've only been eating one for literally years. It's so much easier than the bag, and you know, to be able to scoop and everything. Okay, so now I have to remember that I'm having this recipe. 1.5 cups of flour. Now, one of the tricks to getting a higher cookie, you know, if you're making this into actual cookies and not bars like I'm doing, one of the tricks to getting it into like a higher cookie and not one that flattens out is a higher protein flour. So 1.5 cups of flour. I'm kind of guesstimating on that. I really shouldn't be, but okay. And then, now a lot of people have said, I shouldn't say a lot of people, I saw like 2 people on Instagram say that you don't need baking soda and baking powder in the same recipe. They just use baking powder. That might be true. But I have been doing this recipe the same way for years, and people just fall over themselves for it. So I'm not changing it in any way, shape, or form. So, half a teaspoon baking soda. Gotta do the... Don't tell me I'm the only one. There's that. Oh. A 1/4 teaspoon baking powder. Now remember, I am halving this recipe, so if this sounds like small amounts, it probably is, because it's half of the normal recipe. The full recipe is in the description. And then a teaspoon of salt. Sorry, so half a teaspoon of salt. Where's my half? Okay. And there's our dry ingredients. I'm gonna whisk those together. Okay, I'm whisking these together. See, now all of that is all incorporated together. So when I pour it into the wet ingredients, it'll mix better with the wet. That's my logic, and I'm sticking to it. So now let me see if this has gotten softer. A little bit. Could still stand to sit for a little while longer, I think. This is why you take your butter out in plenty of time, which I thought I did. But as I said before, it has been cold. Like seriously, I had to turn my heat back on cold. It's the middle of May. All right, to help this out a little bit more, we're gonna put an egg in. And for the half recipe, it's 1 egg and 1 yolk. And the yolk just helps it to be richer. And I'll show you a little trick for separating your egg from your yolk. I'm just gonna use this, okay? I know you can't see it, I'm gonna crack the egg into here. I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm just cracking the egg into there. And then I just take it and I use my hand. Ooh. Try not to be dumb and break it like me, but just scoop it out with your hand. Okay, boom. And the egg white is in there. Alrighty, that's simple. I have a sink full of dishes soaking, so I have hot soapy water to wash my hand right there. Very convenient. Okay, so we want this nice and floofy, right? Floofy, okay? Already extremely rich. See? Good workout. All right. So 1 teaspoon of vanilla, because yes, the full recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Makes for an excellent tasting cookie, especially if you get the really good vanilla like I do. This is Nielsen Massey Madagascar Bourbon vanilla extract. Okay, so a teaspoon of that, plus just a tiny little overflow extra. And we'll get that all mixed in, and then we're gonna add our dry ingredients that are already mixed together and already measured out. Make our lives just a teeny tiny bit easier. Okay, oh, it smells so good. All right, now I'm gonna switch to this guy, because there's no way I can mix dry ingredients with a whisk into this. It'll turn into more of like a dough, and then it'll all just stick inside this. Alrighty. Ooh, that's fluffy. All right, so now we're gonna add the dry. Throw all that in the dish, in the sink that's already soaking all those dishes. And we're just gonna mix it all together until it turns into a nice dough. You just kind of want all your flour to be wet. Don't want any dry flour in there. Just like we do with our yeast dough. Except this one, you don't want to overmix it, because what you will do is you will activate the gluten in the flour, and we don't want to activate the gluten in the flour on cookies. No. Don't do that. All right, that's about good enough right there. Just like that, okay? Now for the chocolate chips. Calls for 2 cups for the full recipe. I know I'm probably confusing you. I'm sorry. Just go by the recipe that's in the description for the full recipe. So I'm just gonna eyeball it. How many ounces is this? Oh, 10 ounces? Okay, so a cup is 8 ounces, right? This is 2 ounces more than a cup. So we're throwing them all in there. You can never have too many chocolate chips. Come on now. And we're just gonna fold those in gently until they're just incorporated, because like I said, we don't want to activate the gluten in the flour, okay? There. Boom. Now, I'm gonna take our pan, and you can be all fancy and use parchment paper. I usually do. I'm lazy today. I don't want to, okay? So I'm gonna use butter. It's already kind of a non-stick pan, but I don't trust it, so I'm gonna butter it. But before I do that, I should have done this before I started. I need to preheat the oven to 375. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna butter this, and I'll come back. I'm going to pour this into the pan just so it's ready to go, even though the oven's not completely preheated yet. I just like to have it ready to pop in there. May as well, right? Wake up, my friends. So I took these out around 17 minutes, 16 minutes. I kept an eye on them until the edges were brown. The center was still a little bit jiggly. But I took them out of the oven and left them sitting on top of the stove to set up and continue cooking in the pan a little bit. That's how you get crispy on the outside, chewy on the inside, right? You want them to be a little bit underdone before you take them out. Always err on the side of underdone. Because if you overcook them, you can't go back and undercook them. You can always set them back in the oven for a couple minutes if you feel like they're too underdone. But me personally, I like a nice, soft, chewy cookie or bar. Are you a corner person? I'm a corner person. So this still hasn't completely set up, but as you can see, the center right there is still gooey, which is exactly how I like them. Nummy dance. Speaking of the nummy dance, I made Hawaiian rolls the other day. I have that recipe. I'll put it up there maybe. And my youngest grandson, he's been going through little fits of where it's hard to get him to eat, but he will eat Mima's Hawaiian rolls, which is kind of weird, right? Like no butter, nothing on them. He just pulls them out of the pan and just starts eating them, which is perfectly fine with me. So anytime I have to help my daughter get him to eat, I make Hawaiian rolls. I am going to put a little snippet of his nummy dance at the end of this video. I'm only going to show his feet because the internet's weird, unfortunately. I'd love to show the whole video because he's freaking adorable. But again, that's why I'm not going to show the whole video, because the internet's weird. I hope that you make these. Oh my gosh, please make these. And if you do, please let me know. And please, tell me how it went. And thanks for watching. Subscribe. You subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video. And I left it recording. Look at that. Okay, pan is buttered and oven is preheating. 375. So while that... Okay.